Allison, can I do something silly with you?
Absolutely.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Banana.
Banana who?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Banana.
Banana who?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Banana. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Orange.
Orange? Orange who?
Aren't you glad the banana went away? Okay. I think everybody's probably, or most people are in the room.
Okay.
Everybody, I'm Nicola Barrett, Chief Corporate Learning Officer at Emory Executive Education at Goizueta Business School. Thank you for joining us as we continue our Business Over Breakfast series and our August theme of leadership communication. The school's namesake, Roberto C. Goizueta, the former chairman and CEO of the Coca-Cola Company, once said, communication is the only task a leader cannot delegate. And in this COVID-19 world, it is one of the most challenging. We hope today's topic of humor in the workplace will provide a new dimension for your communications, and that today's session will be a welcome change to some of the challenges we're all facing in this always on distanced work environment where many of us are juggling multiple roles of leader, teacher, parent, dog walker, and more. And for me, I would add driving instructor, a role that requires me to act as the calm adult, even when my insides are churning in the face of imminent death and dismemberment. Regardless of the role, there are moments of humor in each of them, and we just have to look for them. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome Allison Gilmore, the director of Goizueta's doctoral program in business and the chief improv officer for Do More Improv. Building on more than 20 years experience in improvisational comedy, Allison bridges the tools of improv with business management skills to teach a range of leadership principles. Allison's use of stage presence and business acumen in training PhD students in the art of intuitive and spontaneous thinking garnered a named fund in her honor for business doctoral education. For our repeat participants, you know what to expect. For those joining us for the first time, Allison will spend about 30 to 35 minutes sharing some really practical insights on utilizing basic improv techniques to relieve stress, lighten the mood, and find humor in the everyday. This will be followed by around 20 to 25 minutes of Q&A time. And I invite you to write your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. And our team will do their best to get to as many of those questions as we can. And for everyone joining us today, I do invite you to consider our upcoming course with Professors Patrick Min and Lynn Siegel on how to approach problems like a management consultant. That may not sound that humorous, but not only do Lynn and Patrick help you master the very valuable techniques consultants use to problem solve, communicate insights and decisions, but they talk about watermelons often. I never thought of putting the words watermelon and management consultant in the same sentence before meeting them. With that being said, enjoy the morning with Allison. Remember to wear your mask, wash your hands, stay physically distanced, and I look forward to continuing the conversation next Thursday morning as we continue the leadership communication thing. Thank you. And over to you, Allison.
Okay, thank you, Nicola, and thank you so much for having me join your group today and join your team. I'm an avid fan of this group, and I love to teach within this group and teach your clients and students. So thank you for having me. We're going to talk about humor today. So my guess is if you've signed up for this workshop, you either are a fun person or you're looking to have more fun, because we're going to forget the outside world for like 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And we're going to really focus on how can we bring more humor into our workplace, whether it be a workplace that's, virtual, or if you're going into an office. So I hope you're bracing yourself for some fun this morning as we navigate this together. So a little bit, I did a bio, slide about myself as well. And hold on. I wanted just to share that in addition to what Nicola said, yes, I do run the PhD program, and believe me, that is a place where humor comes into play every day as these folks struggle with big ideas and big, new knowledge and creating new knowledge. And I have been doing improv as a art form for a long time, and I started teaching improv at Quizetta about 15 years ago when Professor Rick Gilkey did my Myers-Briggs, and he saw my intuition score, and he said to me, "You have the highest intuition score I've ever seen in 20 years of doing these kind of facilitations." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "You are 99 on a 100 scale for intuition." And of course, I really didn't know what he meant. So he asked me, "Are you ever in a conversation or a meeting where you just say something out loud and people either join in, get on board, or laugh?" I said, "Yeah, all the time." And he said, "Do you think of what you're going to say before you say it?" And my response was, "Never." So I say that, and I share that both as background and as a disclaimer, because sometimes things just come out of my mouth without me planning to say them. But it's because of that improvisational training that I'd done that really caused that intuition score to be high, because improv is really about being present. And we're going to talk about what improv is. I have been in comedy for a long time, most of my career, and I will share with you, people will ask me, like, how did you know you were funny? Like, why did you think you were funny? Why did you want to do comedy? And I always think back to second grade. So in second grade, I had a teacher named Mrs. Cox. I remember her so well because she wore a really tight beehive bun up on her head. And she would take little notes of paper and she would pin them to my dress, because girls had to wear dresses back then. And she would pin them to my dress, and she would send me home with these little notes every day. Not every day, but every few days. And I always thought I was in trouble, right? But my mom would just read the notes and she would kind of chuckle and throw them away. So I finally asked her one day, I'm like, "Why is Mrs. Cox sending notes home? Am I doing something wrong?" And my mom just started laughing, and she's like, "No, she sends me home the funny things you say during class." So I said, "What?" And my mom goes, "You're funny. Okay, I'll just put it to you straight. You're funny." So I guess that's where my comedy journey began. Here's what our mission is today. We're going to gain an understanding of the importance of humor in the workplace. We're going to learn how the benefits of humor apply both to the organization and to the individual. We're going to learn as leaders how we might create environments that support humor and its benefits. And we're going to discover how improv skills can help open that door to humor. So I'm going to take you through the improv guidelines that we use on stage and start tying together the idea of how these improv skills can help you find your humor in your workplace. So as improvisers, we listen actively and we listen with curiosity. So we like to all think we're good listeners. But I would ask you now to name a time or think of a time when something was missed, a deadline, a budget went over, a project didn't get delivered as promised to a client, simply because someone didn't listen. And we like to think we're good at it, but we most often walk around having these sort of dueling monologues where we're just bouncing words off of each other, waiting for the other person to stop talking so that we can tell them what we thought about the topic we're discussing. When we do that, we are thinking about what we're going to say. We block present action. Nothing can really happen if we're not listening. And we're going to think about that in terms of curiosity. So curiosity is about seeking information, not defending information. So if you're truly curious, and we should be by nature, listening is a really great skill to help us learn more about someone else when we combine it with that curiosity. In the world of improv, we also defer judgment. So if I were to go on stage with any of you who are on this call today and start a scene with you, and you blocked it and said no or denied it, you would have caused the scene to stop, right? Instead, we accept each other's reality with a yes and mentality. So how that might look, say I went out on stage with Tiffany and I said, "Hey, it's nice outside today. Maybe it'll rain again." I really haven't given her anything to work with. But if I went outside on stage with her and I said something more like, "Hey, Joanna, I noticed that your dog got into my yard again yesterday. We need to talk about a fence." I've now given her who she is, a character, an object, a dog, a relationship, we're obviously neighbors, and a future. We need to think about a fence. Now, if I'd given all of that to Tiffany as my scene partner and she looked at me and said, my name is not Joanna and I don't have a dog, she would have completely negated and deferred and judged what I said to her, what I offered to her as a gift. In the world of yes and, she may have accepted that idea and said something like, yes, and I have a guy coming over this weekend to have a quote. Do you want to make sure our property lines are clearly marked, right? And think about what's next. So yes and is the founding tenet of improvisational thought around the globe. And it's what I use not only in my communication style, but also in my outlook on life. You know, things are going to happen and we have to accept the reality of what is happening and then use that yes and to help build upon it and take it someplace better. The biggest key, particularly when we think about humor in the workplace and about how we can use improv in the workplace, is to be present, to actually show up and to live your own life and pay attention to the things that are happening around us. If we spend so much time consumed by other things, we spend too much time consumed by being on our phones or being on our computers, we miss what's happening around us. And what's happening around us oftentimes is humor or opportunity, or sometimes the combination of both. So we're going to do a quick poll now. So I'm going to ask you for your patience as we switch screens to administer this poll. Keisha and the exec ed team is going to help us out with that one. But the simple question is, who's your favorite comedian or comic actor? Who's someone you think of as being really funny? So you can go to the link that's over in the chat window, menti.com, use the code you see on the screen, 312037, and just plot for us who that person is that comes to mind when you think of a comedian or a comedic actor. This is fun. Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle, Amy Schumer. I'm so glad to see women on this list. John Mulaney, Jim Carrey, Tina Fey. Oh, I've got a question here from William Fuller. What is your advice to professionals who cannot tell a joke? Practice. Practice in front of your family. Practice in the mirror. Is it the right joke? Think about the joke you're trying to tell. Perhaps the type of humor needs to be considered. And, you know, sometimes it's not even a joke. It's a story. Okay. Robin Williams seems to be dominating so far. Oh, Carol Burnett made it. Yay. Tina Fey, Tiffany Haddish, Amy Schumer, Jim Carrey, Angela Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, Mitch Hedberg. Well, you guys really know your comedians. Alan Alda. Yay. Thank you for Alan Alda. Wow. All right. Stephen Colbert, Wayne Brady, Martin Short. My friend Gary Anthony Williams actually performs with Wayne Brady, and Whose Line Is It Anyway? Trevor Noah, Mr. Bean, Billy Crystal. These are great. TJ, awesome. Okay, thank you. I think we have enough there, Tiffany, right? Awesome. So let's get back over here to so we got a good sense of where everybody was. I always like to take that poll just to sort of see like who my audience is and, you know, how versed they are in comedy. And you guys are really well versed. You got some really great people in there. So let's talk about humor. What is it? What exactly is humor? Well, it's not about being funny.
Oh, I'm sorry. Allison, I hate to interrupt. We're not seeing your screen.
Oh, okay. There we go. That good?
There we go.
There we go. All right. So it's not about being funny.
I
got it on it. Thank you. Nor does it mean telling jokes or being that class clown who walks around the building telling jokes all day. I mean, we know those people. But it's so much broader than that. Humor is really more about being human, about being genuine, and about being real, being your authentic self. When you're living in that space, in that authentic mindset, you'll learn that humor is all around us if we're just paying attention. It's about having a sense of balance and finding the funny in everyday life. Now, I have to confess, I have a really easy way that I find humor every day. Now that we're working from home, and all of our neighbors are, I'm surrounded by little girls. I have a 6 and a 4-year-old on one side of me and 2 4-year-old twins and a 6-year-old just up the street. I know their schedule and I know when they walk by my house in the mornings, and they love to pick flowers from my flower bed. And I've got to tell you, engage in conversation with the 4-year-old, and it's really hard not to find what's funny. It's about observing the joy that exists all around us if we're just paying attention. It's really easy right now to get bogged down, to get feelings of despair, and wondering where the hope is. And as I tell my 84-year-old dad every day, sometimes you just have to turn off the news, and you have to walk outside or talk to a neighbor or look up in the sky to see the clouds. Joy and happiness still exist in the small things in life. And that's a great way to balance the feelings we might be having right now. From Dwight D. Eisenhower, a sense of humor is part of the art of leadership, of getting along with people, and of getting things done. So let's talk about humor and the leader. Humor is an effective tool to build an inspiring workplace culture. It can also be the end result of building that culture. So if you create an environment that's inspiring and creates this great culture, then the end result, you have this great culture that's also imbibed with humor. So leaders must start by building a positive environment. Here's where listening and yes and can really help. As a leader, when do we truly listen and get feedback and new idea generation from those who we work with? And do we support those ideas, or do we shut them down? That yes and can really help us accept. Now, I'm just going to be really clear. Yes and is not about agreement. Yes and is about hearing someone else out, about really genuinely listening to the idea they may have. And even if that idea is not appropriate for the moment, or maybe that idea is not something we can, as an organization, pull together at this moment, we can still listen to the idea and then use the and to redirect, or the and to build upon it if the idea is something you could support. So the minute we shut somebody else down and tell them we don't agree with their idea, you know what happens? They stop bringing us ideas. And if you've hired someone because of their creativity and their intelligence, let them use it. So what if it's not a great idea at the moment? It could be a great idea in the future, or it could be the genesis, the seed of something even better. That's where yes and can help you as a leader. The first step is really about building a positive workplace and culture by being your authentic self. Letting the people who see you and work with you know who you really are. How you can set the tone and you can set the mood and show that you're willing to laugh at yourself. The Bell Leadership Institute did a study recently, and they found that the 2 most desirable traits in leaders were a strong work ethic and a good sense of humor. There was also a Robert Half survey done recently that said 91% of executives believe a good sense of humor is important for career advancement. I've got a question here. I'm accustomed to multitasking and I struggle to be present in the way you mention. Any advice on that? Yes. Put the stuff away. I mean, as I sit here and work in my office, there are days when I get so overwhelmed with all the tasks that I have at hand, that I just have to, I'll set a timer, and within an hour, I'll take 10 minutes in every hour and just walk outside, get away from the machinery, put on a funny video, watch a clip of a movie, whatever it might be, just to break away from the multitasking. The thing about multitasking is it can suppress creativity. And for me personally, I find that if I'm trying to do too many things at one time, I'm not as efficient, and more room for error. Another question, what are your thoughts on sarcasm as humor? Well, I'm a fan. But with like any type of humor, you have to be sure that the people you're sharing that type of humor with also appreciate that kind of humor. So you need to test the water a little bit to see if other folks think sarcasm is funny within your team or your organization or your family. So the organization, humor within an organization strengthens relationships. How many times have you had an occasion where you and a coworker just busted out laughing over something even unsaid, because you strengthen your relationship through shared humor, and you know what pokes each other, makes each other laugh. It enhances collaboration. It makes it easier to work with people if you can imbibe with some humor. I'll tell you 2 quick stories. First one kind of speaks to point 1, strengthens relationships. And I told this person I was going to share the story on this call. So our registrar at Emory and I are next door neighbors when we're in the building. And so we have a good relationship and we laugh a lot together. And so he sent me an email a few weeks ago, and the subject line was just help, 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 question mark, exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. And then when I opened the email, it said, call me ASAP. And he gave his phone number. His name is Marvell Nesmith. So I wrote Marvell back and I said, well, I could call you back if you would give me your whole phone number, but you left a number out. So he sent me his number, and I called him, and he picked up the phone, and he said, hey, how are you? No, he said, are you doing okay? And I just started laughing. I'm like, no, I'm not doing okay. How are you? And he's like, no, I'm not doing okay either. And we can say that to each other because we were being honest. We were being our authentic selves. We were being vulnerable, and we're being able to share how we really were feeling. And then we both just busted out laughing. And we both felt so much better that we could actually share that with each other and say, you know, it's not okay right now. I helped him with this situation, and we worked it all out. When I think about collaboration, we have a professor here at Emory who's a stand-up comedian. And I was in a conversation with him over email that was starting to get a little bit uncomfortable because it was a problem that had arisen. And so he called me, and I saw his caller ID, and I picked up the phone and I said, hey, his name, I won't divulge who that was. And he just goes, Allison, is that you? I'm like, yeah, it's me. And he goes, how could you answer the phone so cheerfully to someone who's caused you to have a big mess to have to clean up? And my response to him was, we're in this together, and we're going to have to clean it up together through collaboration. So why would I waste the time being angry or getting in an argument with you when we need to figure it out together? And I employed a trick my father shared with me when I was young. My father had an illustrious career in sales. And he always said to me, and I want you to try it with me now. He said, whenever you pick up the phone, plant a smile on your face. So I'm going to ask everybody right now just to fake a smile. Just do like me and just plant this big smile on your face, whether you feel happy or not. Okay. That one little motion sounds like happiness over the telephone. And he would always answer phone calls from his clients that way, so they would know he was happy to hear from them. The truth of it is, and neuroscience tells us that the nerve endings in your face when you smile send a message to your brain that you're actually happy. So after planting that smile on your face just now, maybe some of you are actually feeling happy. Humor also helps diffuse conflict, just like the example I just gave of answering the phone cheerfully. It promotes group bonding. I do a lot with my PhD students. We have a virtual Thirsty Thursday. We used to have a in-person Thirsty Thursday, which is our happy hour. And I always show funny clips from SNL or other comedy shows. And now we have sort of this common language that we share around those jokes that we've shared. It's a key ingredient in creative thinking. I mean, the minute we start laughing, the more our neurons start firing off and we can be more creative. And it helps us see challenges in more novel ways. How can we approach this project from a point of view of this is, you know, sometimes it's like, this is just ridiculous. How are we going to figure it out? We'll figure it out together. Humor can be effective in building a really inspiring workplace culture, and it has to be about living and keeping those values in that culture. It's as much of a byproduct of working successfully as it is a factor of success. Companies nowadays more and more are tapping into what's being referred to as the humor advantage. because humor and a fun culture can help brand a business. It can help attract and retain employees and attract customers. So I have a few examples on the next slides of companies I think who've done pretty well. So we have Dollar Shave Club, and on this deck, there's a clip here from the CEO and founder of Dollar Shave Club, who is an Emory graduate. He did our commencement speech in 2018. And if you watch it up until maybe minute 12, he talks about how important improv was in helping him found his business. He sold that business for $1 billion 2 years ago. On Geico, and at one point Geico had 3 different advertising campaigns going simultaneously. They made like advertising history for being the first company to have 3 campaigns all going at the same time. I'll let you think about what those are. Southwest Airlines, we've got Flo. I've seen her perform out in LA. She's a hilarious improvisational comedian. We've got the new Jake from State Farm, sorry. And then we've got the Comedy Gods and Sonic commercials, who I've seen perform in Chicago. They perform at Improv Olympic. And then I'm not sure if you've seen this company yet, but when there was the great toilet paper scare, this company Tushy emerged as a company that sells at-home attachable bidets. And their packaging and their advertising and their promotion materials are hilarious. Hilarious is memorable. People remember more when they're having fun learning. And these brands are more easily, recallable because we remember the humor in them. So what are benefits of humor to the individual? We have physical benefits, mental benefits, and career benefits of humor. So first, the benefits of humor that are physical. Laughter boosts your immunity. So I want you to do this with me. I want you to put one hand on your belly, one hand on your chest. I want you to take a deep inhale, and then I just want you to laugh out loud. Your roommates, your spouses, your children may think you're crazy, but let's do it together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Feel better? Practice that one. It's really helpful. If you're trying to get energized for a meeting or that 6th Zoom call of the day, try, just forcing yourself to laugh. It works. Humor also lowers stress hormones. You're less likely to feel stressed out if you're having fun and you're laughing. It can decrease pain. It can relax your muscles, and it can prevent heart disease. So physical attributes or benefits of humor. It also can affect your mental health. So humor can add joy to your life. It can add zest to your life. It can ease anxiety and ease tension. It can relieve stress and improve your mood. So I'll give you a tip, something that I do. And my students recognize when I'm doing this. If I've come from a meeting that was challenging, or all of a sudden I've just gotten a new project just landed in my lap and it has to be done by tomorrow, I'll oftentimes go to my office, shut the door, and pull up scenes from the Carol Burnett show or scenes from Seinfeld, some of the people that you named, right? And just give myself a 3 to 5 minute feed of something that I need. And that's usually humor. And that's definitely helps me relieve stress and improves my mood. I've got a question here. Any tips on the use of humor in a multicultural international work environment? Yeah. So my students are from here, Brazil, Albania, Korea, China, Turkey. So pretty very multicultural. I've found that I have them share with me, tell me what would be funny in Korea, or tell me what would be funny in China. Show me funny videos from your country. And then I do find myself, because I'm a Southerner, I grew up in Charleston, I speak in a lot of colloquial terms. And I'll see the students who are multicultural from different countries just kind of scratch their head and say, I don't really know what you mean. I was telling a student who was expecting a child, well, they'll be here before you know it. He's like, what in the world does that mean? So it means, I explained to him that time passes so quickly that it will be here before we realize it's even here. So be mindful of your own terminology if it's something you think folks from another culture might not understand. And as I always say to my students, if explain the jargon. If you're going to use the jargon, then explain the jargon. Another question: in any long-term interaction, I always try to move along the continuum from rapport to relationship respect. What role do you think humor and being genuine plays in successfully achieving that end state? So honestly, those tools of acceptance and those tools of actively listening to someone and showing them respect by listening to them goes a long way towards achieving that end state. To be always thinking of, am I respecting this person by listening to them? Am I respecting their ideas? Am I cultivating them as a team member to share their ideas? And when in terms of our careers, people with a sense of humor are more likely to be hired than others. So in a recent Bell Institute study, 84% of people polled stated that employees with a sense of humor do a better job. Now, is that true, or is that a perception? But the perception is that people who with a sense of humor do a better job, so they're more likely to be hired. Well-placed, clever humor can enhance your career. And again, it's more a matter of, is it respectful humor? Is it humor that's appropriate? Thomas is asking, is there a danger in using too much humor and being perceived as a goof? Well, I guess I run that risk pretty frequently. I get asked to go to do a lot of brainstorms and meetings because people just want to engage my brain. I can be silly, but I hold it in if it's a topic that needs, some serious consideration. I still try to find the humor in the situation, but not in a jokey, too silly way. But people know that I have a sense of humor, and that's oftentimes why you get called in to work on projects. Humor allows you to stand out and to be memorable. Also, you appear more approachable. People are much more likely to come and talk to you and share their problems with you or share jokes with you, whatever it might be. You appear more approachable. And humor can increase productivity through interaction and brainstorming without judgment. So again, back to the yes and, back to the accepting without accepting other people's reality without judgment. How do we open up that dialogue? How do we open up conversations where humor can be allowed to enter? And there's so much humor that just exists in things we observe. I was at a conference in Chicago, and we were in one of those humongous, conference hotels, 80 floors or whatever. And this conference was for people who were applying for jobs to be finance professors. So, barrel of monkeys there. And I was on the elevator with people like myself who were all like in the more of the hiring faculty arena. And there's a young woman who is standing outside, the door's open. She's standing out in the hallway on her phone. She walks onto the elevator. She doesn't look up. She doesn't pay any attention to what floor we're stopping on. And she's just getting on and off. At every floor, she gets on and off, looks out, and gets back on the elevator. And it got to the point that all of us on the elevator were looking at each other, and we all started giggling. And we all found that commonality of, finding something in our environment right there in front of us that was funny. What do you think about humor on the expense of other work partners? No. I mean, that person has to have, you have to make sure you're sensitive, right? You have to make sure that you're not hurting someone else's feelings. And if it's something that's already happened and there's a work partner is often the butt of everybody else's jokes, I might check in with that person and actually say, you're a really good sport that we, can poke fun at you and you take it okay. Are you okay? And just make sure that they're fine with that. Okay. So how do we bring humor to the workplace? First of all, we show up. We're present. We're paying attention, and we're listening. I had a thought about how do we know what other people's sense of humors are like, by listening and seeing what they find funny. Or if we were all to have done that word cloud where we'd listed all the comedians out and I could identify which of you typed in which name, I would know that's your go-to comedian, and I would be able to bring that person into conversation or talk about that person. I had a conversation a couple months ago with someone where I learned a colleague and I both appreciate the same show on NBC, The Good Place. And I had not created a bond with this other colleague yet. I really hadn't gotten to know them. And so once I learned we shared that same interest, so we both liked the show The Good Place, I was able to walk down to her cube and talk to her about it, and all of a sudden create this opportunity for us to grow our relationship by finding what we had in common. So by listening, you can really find out where commonalities might lie and use those commonalities then to build that relationship around humor. Use the tools of improv to accept ideas. I just think I covered that one. Excuse me. Create rituals or traditions and safe moments when everyone can participate. So meetings are a perfect place to do that when you consider creating rituals or traditions or safe moments. In our weekly virtual Thirsty Thursday, I do a trivia contest. And so I'll do trivia about the university, I'll do trivia about the city, I'll do trivia about the Coca-Cola company and the founders of Coca-Cola and the different CEOs, since we have a couple of their names on our buildings around the school, and help people learn more about Atlanta if they're new to town. So add a fun game. It could be, if you meet weekly, you might have on this week, everybody bring a recipe you made this week, or everybody bring a story from your childhood that you want to share, or everybody bring, what movie you've watched this week. So find ways you can share and start building a tradition, or build a tradition around storytelling. Everybody come to that meeting and share a story about what they did over the weekend. It enhances your storytelling expertise, and it also brings humor in at the same time. Shared team experience gives everyone a shared history. So that's a way that you can help build more collaboration and more trust on your teams. And then I had a young woman at a corporation here in Atlanta I was working with, and she said to me, I'm a funny person, but I'm afraid to be funny at work. What should I do? I always have funny thoughts in meetings, but I'm afraid that if I say something funny that not everyone, kind of like the question, will I be perceived as a goof? So I said to her, do you have a colleague who you could go to lunch or go to coffee with and get to know, and let that person start understanding your humor? And that way it'll make it easier for you to show your humor in a group setting, because somebody is going to get it, right? Somebody gets you. Any suggestions for handling differences in multi-generational humor? Yeah, I mean, I think humor is universal. And if we can find those sort of appropriate moments of humor that we can share between generations, there's lots and lots of jokes that are appropriate for a 4-year-old or an 84-year-old. So finding those kind of sources and understanding that humor really is universal, and we should all be sharing it. So another quote before we go to Q&A, because I know we've got some Q&As lined up here. Rarely are we more real than when we laugh. We are never more human than when humor shatters the professional mask we sometimes wear, revealing the true human being lurking underneath the corporate facade. It's by Mike Kerr. He's a expert at humor at work. He's published a few books. And I thought that was a marvelous quote when we think about, it reveals our true self. And again, how do we show up as an authentic self, in our authentic self? I have a parting chuckle before we go to more Q&A. So I'm just going to play this really quick. This is not YouTube, so this one should play fine. And I hope the volume's fine. Let's just double check it before I start it. Get it up there. Okay, here we go.
Can I pet that dog?
No,
Can I pet that dog?
no,
Can I pet that dog?
no.
Can I pet that dog?
I cannot tell you how many people I have shared that video with. I shared it with a friend last week who lost her husband 2 years ago. And we went over just to have, a commemorative sort of memorial dinner and champagne. And I showed her that video. She's a dog person too. That helps. And she was on the floor crying. We had to keep playing it over and over and over again. And see, that's a totally appropriate clip for a 4-year-old or an 84-year-old. Again, it's a universal chuckle. So again, those improv skills, listen to each other, be respectful, accept each other's ideas without judgment, and be present and show up in your own life and pay attention to what's happening around you. And now we'll open the floor for questions or more questions in the chat.
Thank you, Allison. That video is absolutely hilarious. I love it. And thank you for the great information. There are some questions that have come up in the Q&A, and there's one from the chat that is asking, is it okay to use situations in your family that relate and that are funny to make you more relatable?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the more personal you can get, especially as a leader, you're showing that you're vulnerable. You're showing that you have traditions with your family, perhaps. You're showing that you can laugh at yourself and laugh at your family. We bring those kind of stories into our daily lives all the time. So yeah, totally.
Thank you, Allison. What if you're stuck on a team and you're the only funny person on the team?
Well, it could go a couple of ways, right? You could become the person everyone goes to. Because as I said earlier, humor makes you more approachable. So you could find yourself as being the one everybody comes to talk to about things. You could find yourself becoming like the team cheerleader. But if you're needing humor from your team and you're not getting it, maybe a strategy for that is to bring humor to them. Maybe show them that dog clip. Maybe show them that clip I tried earlier. Maybe share with them a couple of fun jokes, and let them know that you're a humorous, that you enjoy humor, and that's how you manage your stress. And maybe you could even recommend it as a way they manage their stress as well, is to take a moment to pause and watch something funny and have a laugh.
Thank you. There's a question that's come up. Any suggestions for bringing humor to an awkward group?
You mean like today? That was a joke. I mean, and I'm not really joking when I say that it is different. Sitting in a chair, staring into a camera trying to talk about humor is way more awkward than being live in a room in front of all of you and engaging with you, and God forbid, maybe hugging or handshaking somebody. But I think probably I've done a lot of work with scientists at the CDC, the School of Nursing, and for them, humor needs to be backed up with data, if that makes sense. So if you're working with people who really extremely data focused and have a data mindset, can you show them statistics of why humor is helpful, while you bring them into your fold of humor and share things. And that's probably the best piece of advice I would get, is to explain why humor is important, or just show why humor is important.
Allison, it's obvious that you're just a natural comedian. Do you think being funny can be learned? And if so, how would one go about that?
Oh my gosh, yes. Great question. So I founded a group here in Atlanta called Laughing Matters. We are the longest running improv group in the entire Southeast. We used to say that we were the oldest group, and then we learned that we were the oldest group, so we changed that to longest running. And our motto was always, give us a good brain and we can teach it to be funny. And I would start by taking an improv class, honestly. And a lot of the improv companies here in town are offering online classes. There's an entrepreneur here in town who used to be out in Seattle, and then she was in Chicago. Her name is Amanda Roundtree. She does great improv classes, open improv classes. All the theaters, Dad's Garage, Whole World, The Village, The Basement. These are all improv theaters here in town. And if we can train, you can train a brain to be funny if the brain's a good brain. So yeah, it totally can be learned. Maybe you just start watching more stand-up, or maybe taking a hand at trying to write a joke or create a joke or tell a joke.
Thanks, Allison. How do we find humor in a time that's so stressful?
You just have to unplug. I'm honestly an evangelist about unplugging from the madness. Like I suggested earlier, taking that time in your day to go out and observe the world and see what positive is still happening. Because there's a lot of good stuff still happening. I mean, one of our neighbors this week was collecting anybody's to-go containers that we had from having leftovers, because she was cooking meals for a group of people that all live in a pay-by-day hotel. Right? That's inspiring. That's there's good being done. So more than anything, I think we have to sometimes get off the treadmill of news, and whether it's radio, TV, or newspaper, or get off of Facebook, get off of any media, Twitter, that's causing you distress and feel anxious about what's going on in the world, and find what's existing, living, and breathing right now that's good, because there's good out there.
Allison, one of our participants comments that many times she's been told that using humor in a male-dominated field for women makes men question your credibility. Do you have any advice on this for both younger and older audiences?
Sure. So I work in a male-dominated field when I work in comedy. I'm the only woman in my group and have been for years, which is why I started an all-female group with all the other only women. So I can tell you what worked for me. I'm not sure I can tell you how to manage that yourself, but what worked for me was knowing what they found funny. Also watching sports, or at least reading the sports page, so I could communicate, with things that I thought they might also find interesting. I have a confession though. Over the weekend, I was here in my office downstairs, and we watched Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible 4. And when it was over, my husband was scanning through, because we watched it, and I love the gadgets of the James Bond's movies. But when it was over, we saw Top Gun was on Netflix. And so we turned Top Gun on. And I told my husband, I have never seen this movie, but I feel like I know it by heart, because all the men that I do improv with have referred to the characters of Top Gun for the last 20 years. So I could, do the part. I could act out the part on stage if they went into a Top Gun mode, even though I'd never seen the movie. But I think when you're the only woman, you have to also have some pretty clear boundaries about what you think is funny yourself, so that the men in the group, if they were to tell a joke that was inappropriate or offensive to a woman, you need to make sure they know that. And but there are ways to find humor that they would appreciate by getting to know them more and listening to what they're interested in. What do they talk about when they're pouring their coffee in the morning? Or we don't do that together in the same place anymore, but where can you find commonality? And then from commonality, you build humor.
Thank you, Allison. And just to let you know, you're getting so much love in the chat and in the Q&A box. Everybody is really, really loving and appreciating this content. And I think we may have time for one more question, just depending on how you answer this one. But this is a really good question. What are some ways to build confidence in using humor if people have told you you aren't funny?
Just do it. I mean, so there are a couple of things that help build confidence in communication. Eye contact is really key. posture is really key, like making sure you can breathe, and making sure you're not all arms crossed up and legs crossed up and hands in pockets. So your confidence can really start with posture, and that can even happen here on this screen. We all think we got to be up here on the camera. We can push back and show our whole body and, hand gestures and movements. So posture, breathing, listening, and just doing it, just being funny, and getting that feedback from other folks. I did see a question that said, Jody says that she's an introvert and doing improv terrifies me. I will share with you that I'm actually an extroverted introvert. So, going into a networking or a cocktail event of 50 people I don't know terrifies me. Okay. But walking out on stage in front of 200 people that I don't know, no problem. So I'm actually an introvert myself, and it takes me a lot of energy to do things like this. I mean, this morning I got up a couple hours ahead of time than I usually do. I did some meditation, and then I did a workout with Paula Abdul. I did a little dancing. I drank a lot of water. I took my stress gummies. But you use your terrified place, that place where you're terrified, you acknowledge it, and you say, I'm terrified right now, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I'm going to be brave. I'm going to be confident in my own ability to be humorous, and I'm going to step out in fear, because we step out in fear, and I'm going to pull this off because I'm going to listen, and I'm going to accept people's ideas, and I'm not going to judge, and I'm going to be present.
Thanks, Allison. I thoroughly enjoyed the "Can I Pet That Dog" video. So thank you.
One thing I'll tell you about that, Tiffany, it becomes an earworm. So we went to my brother's lake house a couple of weekends ago, and they have 3 great big Danes, and I'm like, "Can I pet that dog? Can I pet that dog?" My brother's like, "What is this thing you keep saying?" So I played him the video, and now he says it all the time too. So I hope I didn't ruin anybody's earworm by plugging it full of stuff. But it
was awesome. And the videos that Allison shared today, you all can find those links in the chat. But as we wrap today's session, we want to thank Allison Gilmore for joining us for the Business Over Breakfast webinar series, also the wonderful executive education team for putting this on every Thursday morning. And of course, you all, our attendees who come back each and every Thursday to join us with your wonderful questions and comments. We appreciate you all taking the time out and spending it with us this morning. So just a couple of things that we want to share with you all that we've got coming up over the next couple of weeks with the Business Over Breakfast webinar series. Next week, joining us will be Brandon Smith with the Urgency Epidemic. So that's coming up next Thursday, August 20th at 9 a.m. So we're continuing along with our executive communication presence topic for the month of August. And then ending August, we'll have General Ken Keene and Nicola Barrett hosting the Commander's Intent. So those are the next 2 Thursdays at 9 a.m. As always, a copy of this recording is gonna come available on the Emory Executive Education LinkedIn page. So look out for that email. That link is also located in chat if you wanna check out the Emory Executive LinkedIn page. We will have a brief survey pop up on your screen. We just ask you to take about 1 to 2 minutes, give us some feedback on today's session. That'll be coming up shortly. But again, thank you all so much. And Allison, I'll turn it back to you for any final closing remarks.
So my final closing remark, I saw on the webinar chat that Alejandro asked what happens if all your jokes are dad jokes. So I've got a parting joke for you. When does a joke become a dad joke? When it becomes apparent. Ha ha. Enjoy that one. And thank you guys all. I'm reading through some of the chats now. I really appreciate your feedback. I'll be teaching for Exec Ed in the fall and Executive Presence and their communication series. So I want to always plug the work that I do with them, and hope to see some of you in a session in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Allison. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.